put up all those slides of all of the technological issues, and you get the technologists to talk about all of those things for the transformation. How timely, right? We should actually do the conference like this, not like you don't have the sessions pre-built. Just put up the questions like that and try to figure out if you can do something along that line. How awesome that will be. Talk about the digital transformation, right? Okay, so I'll quickly talk about myself a little bit so that, what perspective that I'm trying to bring to this audience right now, right here. From the publishing standpoint of view, I was involved for about 4 years with the American Gastroenterological Associations, the top doctors, the GI doctors in the world, right? Phenomenal, the smartest guys. Just learned a lot from them. But when it came to running business and association, not their cup of tea. So I come to you from Washington, D.C., United States. I think, as Suzaza mentioned, that I've been in the association space for entire of my career. It's been a fun and challenging because of all of the regular business issues that we all go through, especially the funding, how to invest money in technology, and how to actually actualize the ROI on that. So I'll be talking a lot about that today. Because the publishing is not my DNA, so my presentation to you is going to be especially on the digital transformation side, and from the outside looking in, from the non-publisher's point of view, what do we see? I think there are tons of issues. When I look at tons of issues, I see opportunities, right? And in my career, that's exactly what we have tried to do. And I will share some of those experiences with you as well. I know there's a presentation later from Elsevier as well. When I work at the American Gastroenterological Association, the GI doctors, that's what I like to call them, we work with Elsevier very closely. Fantastic publisher. But anyways, I digress. So this is me, right? The technology guy. Again, I'm a business guy, technology guy. Quickly, this is what I do right now. I'll quickly mention, what has been my expertise, what I have done, and what has helped me. I always look at this, and Max talked about very nicely, from the consumer standpoint of view, where we need to be, right? Where do we meet our customers at? Are we there? When I say are we there, what customers are demanding right now in the marketplace, what they experience with other technology and other services that they have available out there, are we playing the same game? Or are we still that PDF warehouse that we talk about, especially on the publishing side? How can we go from where we are to where we need to be in order to meet their demands and where things are? I'm really not a bicyclist in a way. I got here on Saturday. I have a 14-year-old son, fantastic. He challenges me on everything that I do. Everything that I know. I'm a kid from Kathmandu, Nepal. As any other Asian kid, I'm supposed to be a medical doctor. My mom lives with me right now. She has ovarian cancer in America. And every now and then, she will pull my kid aside and say, Prabha, his name is Ishan, and my mom will tell him, your father could not become a medical doctor or scientist or publisher. You better be one, okay? Yeah, that's what I get every day. But anyways, this is a great honor to be here for me, especially not being from this side of the pond. I have, again, as part of the digital transformation, in each one of my experiences in the association, we have looked at things from the needs standpoint of view, from the consumer standpoint of view, right? Stanford University, they have this fantastic design thinking school, D3. If you haven't looked at it, please take a look at that. They actually are mastering this art of how do we get out from our comfort zone to look at how we should be looking at things from the consumer's eyes. And sometimes we are so ingrained in our business, it's probably better to get out and see what people are thinking. So there's some things I will share with you today again, on a two-part kind of demo. So I bring up the bicycling thing. Yesterday I had a little bit of time, so I decided that, what do I do? There's so much to see in London. Next thing you know, I find myself going to one of those bicycle stands. How many of you have used that? Well, many of you. I could actually tour the whole London 24 hours for $2. Think about that, right? For $2, I could. So what do I do? What do I do? Not a bicyclist, but I love it. I do Tower Bridge, Piccadilly Circus, Trafalgar Square. I'm not saying this in a proper accent, so my apology there. I did the Thames, Parliament Building, Big Ben, London Eye, literally all of this in less than $2. As a consumer, I love it. Is it hurting other businesses? I'm sure. What do they need to do? They need to step up their game, right? They really, truly do. The second example that I'll bring, a quick little story here, and sometimes, you come to this presentation with your, yeah, I want to talk about A, B, and C, and then you talk to John Haynes, and you talk to Max, and they tell me, Prabhash, and I talk to Ian, and then as part of your coffee break, slightly your presentation changes. So I was talking to John about, one of the real true changes that we brought about in one of our association. We actually were creating these fantastic textbooks, chapters by chapters, then the quizzes for the medical doctors to actually take their board exams, right? And it's nothing new, nothing sexy or fantastic stuff, but we really truly kind of said, you know what, I'm new here. I was a whiz kid that was brought in to this association, and one of the things that we said is, let's go out and find out what's going on. I am, as many of you, I also have many credentials, certifications, and as many of you, I do have to go through that certification renewal processes and what have you. And one of my experience was, I did, especially the project management, professional certification. I don't know how many of you have that. I feel like I literally did all of my, continuing education on my mobile phone. Most of them within my bathroom. I have a 14-year-old son, 11-year-old daughter. 11-year-old daughter, big problem, but it's okay. You all know that, right? And that made me think about the consumer experience. Are there opportunities for us to do things differently? Because I was in that space of the GI doctors that we talked about. So, we went out to many of the hospitals in America, right? Johns Hopkins, this, that, and everything, And we started talking to the doctors, what's the pain point? What problem do we need to solve? How can we do things differently? We reached out to many different partners. New England Journal, I'm going to drop some names, sorry about that. New England Journal of Medicines and various associations, cardiology, this, that, Heart House. And this came through a journey where we said, you know what, we got to do things differently. The way doctors are demanding how they do things, right? So one of the outcome of all of that was we actually, started creating this app, mobile app. Right? Again, like I said, WizKid, right? They bring me in. And we finally, in association space in America, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that setting, that ecosystem. I have to go convince my executive team. I was part of that as well. Easier, because again, I was new. There's a honeymoon period, and you can do a lot of things within that time. And then I had to go and talk to my board to get the approval of the funding. And John, you really know this because you're in that space as well. And many of you, I'm sure you are. So, the funding got approved. I believe in bringing the mobile apps and other technologies. There's something that we live by called time to market, that we really, truly have to shorten the time to market from 18 months to 2 years to about 3 months or less, where we can actually create something and put it out there as the minimum viable product. Long story short, what ended up happening was within less than 7 months, within this new initiative, we were able to bring in about $1 million of new revenue, right? I mean, this is possible. It's not just a story, right? Right before we left, one other thing that Ian kind of, as we were talking about at our coffee break earlier, and I thought I mentioned this here as part of the digital transformation, was one of the other things that we're looking at that association was data, right? I know there's another session down the road here today. And it's huge. And Max talked to us about, we will be doubling the data on a very short cycle. The focus, however, is what matters to us, right? That's what we need to focus on. How can you use that data for our consumers' demand? That's what we need to focus on if you really, really want to do good. You cannot do 22 things an inch deep. You got to focus on things that matters and matters to your consumer, maybe 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, but really dig deep and become good at it. Nobody else can beat you on that game, right? Again, this is from the technology business aspect. So one of the things that I was sharing with Ian was we were thinking, you can always dream big, right? I like to dream big. So we thought, is it possible within the context of U.S. Healthcare, health data ecosystem, very stringent, no different here, I'm sure. If we would be able to work with many of the hospital settings, the practice settings, the clinical settings, to start bringing the data in with the virtual pipes to our cloud, in a secure cloud, with a compliant cloud, to see if we can become that GI global data storage, especially in the registry setting, and I know many of you are familiar with that, to see if we can leverage that data that we would get from these various players within that ecosystem. How will we benefit that information back to them? Can we start thinking about the quality of care, the outcome, the pop health, the connected health, and all of these things? Could we, on the monetization aspect, could we work with our insurance companies, big in America? I don't know how it is here. Of course, I think it's a completely different scenario. Pharma, healthcare ITs, drug companies, and even government, FDA, which is what approves all of the medicine in America, CMS, and which is a big player, just exactly like your NHS, I think, here, on how they pay all of the Medicare and Medicaid, which is something, a concept. And there will be so many audience that will benefit from something like this. But a lot of these things need to happen on the path of the digital transformation journey, right? Which is what I'm here about. So let's quickly go through some of these slides. I have too many of them, by the way. So as I mentioned, outsider, not from the publishing space, only have experience about 4 years of working with the publishing data and the whole operational aspect of things, which probably is not so bad, by the way. And so I'll be talking about, on the digital transformation business success, right? And then I'll talk about the publishing itself. So I have divided the presentation into 2 different sections. A couple of agenda. I will kind of touch about the environment, where things are, what the barrier is, and how can actually we go through that journey on the first aspect of the presentation. And then the second aspect, we'll talk about how do I see, personally, again, very limited knowledge, so my apology. But this is what I was asked to do. See, maybe there is some, outside looking in. What do you see? See how things are in the digital publication. I absolutely believe that having gone through this exercise of creating this presentation over the last month or so, I believe that there are tons of things that we can play where there are issues, right? I think there are many places we are not exactly up to the par of where the consumer demand is. There are tons of issues, guys. What that means to me from the business standpoint of view, from the technology standpoint of view, it means nothing but opportunities, right? I would love to be in this space. Not that I'm asking you to hire me. I have a good job, by the way. But this will be a space that I would love to be, because I feel like, going through whatever I went through in my quick little study, and I could be so off, there are issues, and that means there are tons of opportunities on how we can play in that space to be better. Or could be that one another, whiz-bang company that we can actually bring the real disruption. Can we think along that line? How can we think along that line, right? Again, there was a study. I want to share a couple of these things. This was done in March of this year. This is where things are. 25% of the publishers feel they are leading, 50% on par, 25% on lagging. On the digital transformation driver standpoint of view, what's driving the digital transformation? Consumer demand. Again, Max talked about this, and we need to play in this space. 26% from the new revenue standpoint of view. So they are definitely looking for new revenue, changing business model, right? And this is probably true with pretty much any business verticals at this point. 22%, they really want to create new products. Again, it plays out to that economy, digital economy that we are talking about, where there's so many things those are happening. And the unbundling that Max talked about, everybody is coming with a solution. It's not a holistic solution, but they will do one thing and one thing so darn well that they will play in that space so very well compared to any other things, right? And that kind of becomes a challenge, a disruption to everything else that's already out there, right? Again, I know that there are tons of things that I have in the slides. I know the slides will be presented back to all of you for the access. But again, metadata, discoverability, content agility, content storage, culture. And I'll talk a little about that as well. As part of the key findings on the digital transformation, these are the major elements in the publishing space that's happening. So let's go through this journey a little bit quickly with me, if that's okay. So technology environment, right? So again, I absolutely believe that we are in a very primitive stage of exponential growth of technology right now. Would you all agree? Right? Things are happening. You're hearing about new companies, new apps, new solutions. They may not do everything. They're very focused on things that they do, and they're very good at. Think about when you wake up in the morning, how many times you look at your phone, how many things to actually do with your phone. I was in a rush to check into my Delta flight tomorrow morning before I walked up here because it reminded me. How awesome was that? Right? And that kind of experience, that's happening all day long, right? I could actually look up that app, the London Bicycle app yesterday, touch it, and I knew that within like 200 yards, I actually had another one at the bicycle stand. And it also told me that within a 30 minutes time, I could park it somewhere else. I didn't have to pay. Not that I'm cheap, but I was trying to smart, see if I could actually do London in $2, and I was. Again, things like that, right? Disruptive technologies are affecting market dynamics, and absolutely how business is being operated right now. What are we doing as part of the digital transformation? Not only creating these cool, sexy products out there, but your internal operations as well. Are you still back in that Excel mode and trying to figure out some reports or one of those things? Or are you actually doing things those are helping you drive future growth in small increments? We need to really, truly look into that, right? And again, we have to become agile, right? I mean, there's a lot of reaction in the market. We have to lead that. And I think the one thing that we are hearing more than ever before is we need to be very customer-centric. Exponential technology. There is a concept, the Singularity University. Please take a look at that. They talk about phenomenal technology growth and upcoming technology, right? It goes all the way into digital biology, nanotechnology, robotics, a lot of these cool, the virtual reality, the augmented reality, a lot of these things that we think are just the fad, but those things are happening. Chris talked about deep learning, machine learning. This is happening. Some of them are on a different phase of their maturity. It's all happening, right? I'll give you a quick little example, real example. When I talked about that live app that we kind of put it out, we actually could see, if people had to pay for this app, there was hesitation, especially we were looking at the countries like India and China, huge market for GI doctors. But from the revenue standpoint of view, there were no purchases, 0.01% purchases from those countries. People were not willing to pay the American dollars for American product. So, one of the things that kind of when we lay over the information from the analytics standpoint of view, we had to understand so many different aspects of the market, right? How do we localize? How do we actually see what will be important? What kind of price they will pay at the local market? $860 for an app probably would not work in the Chinese market, right? So, we take some things for granted, guys, we do. But when you start looking at this data, when you know that there's a huge gap from the customer standpoint of view, where things are coming from. We could see money was pouring in from Europe. You all are rich. We could see money was coming in from, U.S., of course. They waste money there. But there were so many new markets. So talking about the blue ocean of market, where you can dive in. How can you dive in? How can you create the product for those entities for their price, to their taste, to when they want it, right? How do you grow your market? How do you grow your revenue? These are the things those are happening as part of the digital transformation, right? So quickly, again, there are the technology trends those are coming up. We got to be ready for some of these. We absolutely have to. There are tons of opportunities. I just see nothing but that. So what comes in? Whiz bang, the Justice League, the heroes, right? Enters the digital transformation, right? At every company that we are in, some form of shape, this is happening, right? Are you part of the transformation journey at your own company? I love this. This is fantastic. Are you leading it? Any one of you are leading it? Oh, I'd love to talk to you. I would love to pick, people's brain, how they see these things. This is exactly what it is, right, guys? I mean, I think, what is the digital transformation? This is a buzz phrase that we hear so often. Everybody's talking about it. Where's my water? Again, I always, when I think about the digital transformation, again, I talked about this. We really, truly need to start to think about the customers, consumers, how they consume your information, the product and service that you are creating, and how will that be done differently? How can you do that differently? And it's not a project that you start and that it ends in 3 months or 6 months. This is a continuous enhancement. And this phrase is also something that you will hear over and over again, right? How do we get better? It's a journey. It does not end at a certain point because we need to thrive, right? And again, how do you go about doing these things is something that we need to focus on. So why? The realignment of the business models. We all are thinking about that. I know we are, right? Because things are changing. Your competitors, and there are new ones who are coming up with these new businesses that you have not thought about. And they're really hitting your bottom line, right? What can you do? How can you create an environment? How can you create intrapreneurs within your company who actually are thinking along that line, right? To create new products and services that aligns with your mission and vision. There's a lot of talk about leapfrog innovation, right? You don't, again, have to do extensive, phenomenal new product and services. But are there ways that you can do incremental innovation that ultimately becomes a big change on how the business is being driven? Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Digital economy, Max talked about it. This is the new world that we live in. We have to be ready for that, right? Again, another thing that it does, what I have seen in my personal experience is, suddenly it requires all of us to work together. We all talk about silos, and I know it's not an easy thing to fix, but somehow, some way, in order to fix issues like this, you have to become intentional, right? How do you bring people together from all aspects of your company? IT cannot lead digital transformation alone, right? It's a business drive. We all have to come together, right? While we can talk about all of the stuff in the la-la land, all this cool stuff, it has to start somewhere. And as part of the digital transformation, when we are looking for optimal solution for a period of time, or so on and so forth, we got to bring together from different aspects, right? And again, ultimately, the CX. We used to, talk a lot about the customer experience. There's a lot of new buzz about the digital customer experience. Can they do everything that they do now in the digital way? Please think along that line. We have to. You know why? Your competitors are. They're doing it. So what also has happened because of all of this is the product and service development pipeline and the development processes, the implementation, all of that has changed. I can tell you that, having gone through multiple association with a drastically different background. I'm with the bankers now, of course, right? We have about 75% penetration into American banks, which is a huge number. And we are looking at how can we, again, continuous evolution, right? Continuous enhancements that we talked about, and that changes. It really, truly does. So one other thing with the digital transformation, as you think about it, what it does do is it really, truly allows you to do many different things, right? I talk a lot about culture, and it's very important, and especially important in spaces like our space, the publishing space. Right? It's very important because of the fact that there are many good minds, brilliant minds. They're all over the place. And one of the things that I have experienced with the brilliant minds comes some kind of self-ego. Please don't take me wrong when I say this. What that creates is it creates the silo so that we cannot come all together to create a new line of services. That culture, if you really, truly want to create the new services within our space, with the scientific space, medical space, we have to bring people together. One other thing, digital transformation forces you to do that. You have to bring people together so that you can work together for the future of the company, right? I mean, another thing that it does is it forces you to think about technology companies or technology department not doing the operational internal work by changing your laptops, but how can they actually go out and understand the ecosystem and be part of that, the ecosystem within the company to kind of drive growth, new product and services, right? I mean, again, I talk a lot about product and services being a technologist. I consider myself more of the business guy, but I think that's very important, that's one of the distinguish that digital transformation brings to your place. Another thing that we also have seen in the last 3 to 5 years is we are more comfortable than ever before to create the minimum viable product. Rather than spending millions of dollars creating this big, fantastic stuff and putting out in the market and failing that 3 people uses it, we are now more comfortable with creating smaller products, something that works without lots of bells and whistles, putting out in the market to see how many people actually use it, right? And if it does work, then you can actually start adding the phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Facebook, all of these bigger companies, they're doing builds, and I know that the RAVE folks here will agree with me. They're doing builds, software builds every week, trying to give you new features. Sometimes you don't even know on your Facebook app that they're sending you these cool new features. You may see that your app has been updated, but they're working very hard towards that. And suddenly, if you look at the Facebook 3 years ago versus the app that you had 3 years ago versus what you have now, it's a completely different product, right? So a lot of these things are being forced upon us now because of this need of the transformation within our companies. Quickly again, I like to focus on some of the things, how we can actually build this, right? I mean, there are barriers, as we know. Gartner came out with a very fantastic research the other day, talking about what are the barriers for the digital transformation? Resources, funding, culture. Culture, again, comes back again here. Structure, how companies, structured. And again, IT business alignment. Go back, if you're not in IT department, please make them part of what you do as part of your business planning, right? It's very important. Many times, because they're so, entwined with the technology space, they can come up with the business ideas and thoughts that really, truly will help you. So 27% is the number that Forrester put out, saying that they actually have a digital strategy. How many of your company actually has a digital strategy? By raise of your hand. Not 27% in this room, right? So please go back, start talking about some of these things. Again, so on the digital transformation, I will quickly talk about this, right? Sometimes when we want to transfer your company from A to B, there are 2 aspects. One aspect is where it's clear on what the requirements are and what the future product looks like. So you can actually take your company with your team, digital team, whoever that is, from point A to point B. It's easier. There is a traceable path. This is where the challenge is, guys. How do you think about where you don't exactly know what that is, what that point B is? And, I want you to pause and think about this. This could be true with you, every one of you in this room. So what do you do, right? So in IT, at least from the IT strategy standpoint of view, we talk a lot about bimodal IT strategies, where you actually have clear line of path for this defined requirements and how you work with that, and actually start creating a second set of strategy for the things that you exactly don't know how to get to point B. Again, I talk a lot about that journey, right? When you start thinking about the increments, it becomes a lot easier because you actually are defining your path as you go. 4 things. What do you define, right? Portfolio. I want you to think in terms of digital portfolio for your company. Pause. Again, I want you to please do this. Can you think about what are the things that your company is thinking about, let's say, within a year? Too difficult, right? Your company, I want you to challenge yourself. 6 months. What are the new sets of products that you're trying to put out or services that you're trying to put out? That's going to be helpful to your consumers. I'm going to make it easier. Can you think about next 3 months? right? This is very important for every one of us. So we have to think about the people. I talk a lot about culture again. It's very important because sometimes we are not involved with companies' digital transformation. Not saying that every single staff should be, but we should know. People aspect is extremely important on how we actually go through this process, right? Again, these processes evolve, but you have to start defining at some point. And how do you evolve? Very important. Last thing, technology is not all, guys, is the platform. Right? When you have all of the other things defined, then you talk about the platforms, right? How do you actually go about doing some of these? So I'm going to quickly go through some of these slides. I know that I don't have a lot of time to go through this, but again, you will get the slides. I know that I added 3 little stories that kind of threw me off. This happens, guys, okay? And portfolio, people, culture. Again, there's not a phrase for culture itself, but culture is driven. When you take people into your, consideration, right? 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. We have to work hard on it. And on the strategy, how do you actually go about putting the process in place? And on execution level, we actually start thinking about the technology, right? What technology, what kind of platforms do we put in place? So, and ultimately, you have to measure what you do. Are you succeeding, right? Is it working? If you are not doing that, probably, it's not. If you don't measure, I'm not so sure if you can ever say that if you're successful. And sometimes it's very difficult. But you want to think about some of these things ahead of time rather than as you're going through the process, right? What will make us successful for this particular transformation? At what point, how do we measure it? You have to start defining that. Very important. No quick fix. There's no quick fix. Every one of us are different. Every one of our businesses are different. And there's also no one solution fits all. We really, truly have to start thinking about some of these things in a very quick fashion, right? Again, when you are mature, you can initiate within your groups. How do we actually start forward with some of these? And then how you implement. And once things are successful, once you have MVPs established, how do you scale? I have a quick little slide from Altimeter. They actually are also very good at establishing digital transformation plans. Again, slide will be available to you. So I have a quick series of slides here on the second half of my slides. Again, this is your space. This is my thoughts. I could be off. I'm very open to conversate with you now or later. But I'll go through some of these slides and see how I see it, right? One of the things that it was very clear to me that AI is in the space, right? It's big because of all the things that we have within the publishing space. And I don't think we can avoid this. Again, AI issue. I have one of the slides on. I quickly will talk about this. We do, in the publishing space, right? I go to Google. I say, Siri, tell me what's the statistic on X. So it will go do the search from multiple varieties of sources, and it'll come back and tell me, Prabhash, the statistics for education literacy in this particular part of the United States is X. In order for me to do this in the past for the market analysis, I used to have to go get many different companies and buy products from each one of them. I don't have to do that now. That one statement that I just mentioned to myself, I think there's a lot behind that, right? Many sources of information are combined into one. I used to have to pay for each one of them separately. Now I use it, that piece of information, when I do my, whatever I do. How many places I'm not paying for anymore? 5 years ago, for each one of these, I would pay. 10 years ago, for sure. A lot of money, too, I bet. They used to send me tons of documents, pages and pages of research. I don't have to do that anymore. Environment is changing, right? Content creation, automation is happening all over the place, as we all know. There are many of are being used. Content analysis, and especially the content recommendation, the predictive analysis, right? I think there's, again, a session later on that one as well. A lot of these are happening. Depending on what you have done, it will tell you what to do next. Scientific publishing, I know, Chris, there's a lot of things happening with AI. And especially one last thing that I wanted to touch here was quickly on the marketing automation, right? This is more from the digital media houses and so on and so forth, how we interact with the consumer by knowing the consumer behavior. Again, I will zoom through some of these slides just to kind of put it out there, how I see it. Again, all of these, I think, are issues. In my opinion, right now, that also means that these are all the opportunities for all of you, right? Quickly, I just looked at some of the Apple stats. It was fantastic to see that they have 30 million paid subscribers. I say this, and Spotify, right? Just July, they put a number out there, 60 million paid subscribers, 140 million active users. Big number. Very important, because the music industry was almost going to die because of these online disruption. The tide has changed. Now, all of the music, not all, it's a 12 billion pound, it says here, music industry, and so many major players are making money out of this. Spotify was not in business some time ago, if you think about it. Apple released the iPhone in 2007, barely 10 years ago, right? Disruption is happening whether you like it or not. What's yours in your space? Again, so these are some slides that I thought I put it together. This is my, the series search that I talked about, how the issues, that I see, right? What's going on, I think AI industry is on a collision course with the content publishing industry. That's how I see it. That's how I summarize it. There's so many things that's going on. I looked at least 50 software. Those are doing these things in some kind of automated fashion. Right? That's happening. This is happening now, guys. So again, I'll go through quickly. I am running out of time, guys. I'm a little bit behind on some of these slides. But again, content recommendation, this is best known AI application for publishers. This is happening today. What's your space? How are you doing it? Advertising has completely changed from what it was 5 years ago to now. Scientific publishing, there's so many things that's happening, especially with the peer reviews and how, so the plagiarism, proper reporting, statistics, and again, you heard about Pylon AI from CNET. They're coming with this new tool. Just again, some of the fantastic stuff that it actually will integrate with your Alexa. I don't know if you guys use that here in America, UK or not, but those are some of the tools with Amazon that it allows. I have one at home as well. These are happening. EcoBox, look it up, guys. Some fantastic stuff that it does. Again, here, when I come to personalization, again, we're in the space of personalizing a service, personalizing product, personalizing content. We have to play in this space. And again, marketing automation, it's completely changing the game, right? I mean, we start campaigns that actually does everything once you set it up. AI is changing that space. We used to be in the rule-based space. That is absolutely changing. Again, in summation, like a lot of these slides that I talk about, there are a lot of opportunities. I did a little research on the blockchain. There are a lot of projects going on the blockchain. I'm very proud that I'm in a fintech finance space right now in the banking space, and I see nothing but opportunity here with the blockchain. What are you doing? That's my question to you, right? And again, those are some of the quick little things that I see in the publishing space, and a lot of changes, a lot of opportunities. And that's my quick little presentation to you. So, thank you.